The 1996 NBA draft class is widely considered one of the best of all time. 10 players became All-Stars, 4 MVP trophies combined by 3 players, and 8 players named to at least all NBA teams, which is a record for a draft class. There were also multiple Hall of Famers in this draft class, with one being undrafted, the only one that we have seen in NBA history so far. Let's talk about how Ben Wallace went from undrafted to a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year and NBA Hall of Famer. But first, we have to talk about why he was not selected on draft night. Now, we have to talk about why he wasn't called on draft night. It's because of his path to the NBA, which obviously worked out well for him in the end, but it wasn't the traditional route to the NBA. Growing up in Alabama, he was a 3-sport athlete in high school and was an all-state honor for basketball, baseball, and football. He was also mentored by Charles Oakley during this time period and would go to some of his camps where he would end up getting to play for a previous college that Wallace went to, being Virginia Union. That's a reason why he did go there. Wallace first played basketball in college at a JUCO level in Cleveland for 2 years. There, we learned about how good he was defensively with 17 rebounds and 6.9 blocks per game, which is just insane at any level of basketball. He then transferred to Virginia Union, like I said, an NCAA Division II school. He averaged 13.4 points per game and 10 rebounds per game as well when he was there, and brought them to the Division II Final Four, and the team had a 28-3 record. As a senior, he continued to get better as well. He was named by his coaches to the Virginia Union's conference team, which he also made it to the All-CIAA first team as well, and was also selected as a first-team Division II All-American. Now, after his college career, he would end up going to a professional league, but not the NBA. After he left Virginia Union, he was undrafted, and he traveled to Italy to actually try out for a team over there, where he only played 1 game, and it didn't go out so well for him, and he ended up coming back to America, where he would end up getting into the NBA. Wallace would get his chance in the NBA with the then Washington Bullets, which we now know as the Washington Wizards, and he would sign there, and he would only appear in 34 games during his first season there and didn't really play that much. The next year, he appeared in 67 games, and he actually started in 16, but he only averaged 3.1 points and actually averaged more rebounds during that time than he did points with 4.8, though he would get over a block a game throughout that season, and it seemed like the team did have some eyes on him and saw that defensive prowess, which we obviously know how great it has been for him throughout his whole career, but this is really where it started. And then in the 1998-1999 season, which was a shortened season, he started in 16 out of the 46 games and averaged 6 points, 8.3 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game, which he continued to bring his averages up across the board as well. And the team really started to believe in him a little bit more now that he could really go out there and grab boards and get blocks. And especially at this time in the NBA, it's not as high scoring as we know today, as some of these games in the NBA get up to 130 points per team. Obviously, during this time period in the 90s, they weren't scoring as much, so there was more of an opportunity to him to go out there and get rebounds and blocks, and as long as he could not be a liability on offense, he didn't have to be the best offensive player in the league. He would then go over to the Orlando Magic as he was traded over there in the 1999-2000 season, and he actually started in all 81 games that he played in, averaging 4.8 points, 8.2 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks, so all of his numbers across the board would actually go down from the season before, but he was starting in all the games that he played, and they actually wouldn't make it to the playoffs as well, and this is where he would be traded to the Detroit Pistons in the offseason, and this trade would obviously change his career forever. Now, at the time, this was seen as a lopsided trade. Grant Hill, a superstar at that point almost, was being sent to Orlando for what seemed like a role player in Ben Wallace, but as we know, this is when Ben Wallace would become the defensive demon that we would see throughout the rest of his career. By the time he got to Detroit, under head coach Rick Carlisle, we would see him become an absolute beast for this team defensively. He wasn't just good, he was dominant. He led the league in rebounds twice and blocks once, and this is really where that bad boys deep gritty team would come from, and he would be the guy that would really set the precedent for this team, as he was the anchor for them defensively. Between 2002 and 2006, Wallace was named the NBA Defensive Player of the Year 4 times, tying Mutombo for the most in league history. He was also a perennial All-Star during this time period, and this is what I was talking about earlier as well. He wasn't going out there putting up 20, 30 points per night, but he was one of the best players in the league because he was so much better than everyone else defensively that he could impact the game and not have to be the best scorer on the floor or on his team any given night because he was just so dominant defensively. Now, as Wallace got better, this team got better as well, as they would go to the NBA Finals in the 2003-2004 season. Wallace would continue to get better, getting up to 12.4 rebounds per game and 3.2 blocks per game. And even though he would lose out on the Defensive Player of the Year award that season, as he would end up winning 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards in 5 years, he wouldn't win it in this season, but would win in all the other ones. He would also increase his scoring to get up to 9.5 points per game as well, and obviously make the all-defensive team, and he actually made the all-NBA second team during this time period as well. The new head coach for the Pistons, Larry Brown, would get this team to 54 wins during the season, and it would also help out with a big acquisition throughout the season being Rashad Wallace, and this team got even better defensively and scoring as well. This was one of the time periods that we saw in the NBA, and one of the teams that we saw that had a different philosophy. Some teams in the NBA right now have almost no defense, and we've seen that throughout history. Especially now, though, in the NBA, a lot of teams' philosophy is, you can't beat us if you can't outscore us. The Pistons' philosophy during this time period was, you can't beat us if we don't let you score. And that's how they would go on and get to the finals during this time period. They had not been to the finals since 1990, so this would be a very different time period for the Pistons, as really none of these players would be going in there with this championship experience, which they would have on the opposite side against the Lakers. They would be going up against Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, the guys that had just gone out there and won 3 rings. Now, the Pistons would actually go out and win this series, getting a championship and solidifying themselves in the history books forever as well. This would be one of the best championships during this time period, in my opinion, just because it's so interesting to look back on, especially with the group of guys during this time period, especially with a guy like Ben Wallace. Maybe he's not going and getting you 20 or 30 points a night, but he is so good at one thing, and that's what this team was so good at together. They had such great defense that it was kind of cool to see a team go out there and maybe not put up 150 points per night, but really lock down these teams, especially against a team like the Lakers, having 2 guys that can go out and give you 30 plus points every single night. And that's how they got this done and won a championship during this time period. Now, Ben Wallace would play a few more seasons throughout his career as well. He would end up going to the Bulls for 2 seasons from 2006 to 2008. He would end up playing for the Cavs from 2008 to 2009, and he would return back to Detroit from 2009 to 2012. He would continue to make all defensive teams. In the end, he would be a 1-time champion, winning 4 Defensive Player of the Years. He would be on 6 all-defensive teams, 5 all-NBA teams, and would also lead the league in rebounding a few times, lead the league in blocks, and also just go out there and get great stats, especially in the rebounding and blocks department, and be up there all time in the list. He also got his number retired by the Pistons and would be a true icon for this team. And when you think back about this gritty team, those bad boy Pistons, Ben Wallace is definitely one of the first guys that you think of. So let me know down below what you guys think. The only undrafted player to ever make the NBA Hall of Fame to this point. Do you think someone else will be able to do it or not? Let me know down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.